I'll now talk to you about the verb gustar. The most precise translation of gustar is to be pleasing. In colloquial English, it's often translated as to like, but for you as a student, it's best translated this way, because by translating it this way, it will help you to make fewer mistakes with this verb. Now, when you learn Gustar, often your textbook will also teach you verbs that work in a similar way to Gustar, and these are called Gustar-like verbs. So first, I'll show you how Gustar works, and then I'll show you how the verbs that are like Gustar work and what some of those additional verbs are. Now, to use Gustar and other similar verbs, you also need to know your indirect object pronouns, because Gustar and other similar verbs are often used along with these indirect object pronouns. So our indirect object pronouns are me, he, le, nos, os, and les. Indirect objects answer the question to whom or for whom an action is done. And so our pronouns that we have here translate to or for me, to or for you, to or for he, she, or usted. Or we should say to or for him or her, or usted. To or for us, to or for you all in Spain, to or for them, or to or for you all. Okay, so let's try saying the book is pleasing to me. Now we said to me is me. Me means to me. And we all know that book is el libro, or I should say, by the time you get to study in Gustar, you've probably, more than likely, come across this word. The book, to me, and now we need pleasing. Here we have the book. So Gustar, the form of Gustar is going to come here. Now we have to ask, okay, what form do I need to conjugate Gustar in? We want it to be the present indicative, but what do I do? What's the subject? Well, we're going to work backwards from the very end. The book is pleasing to me. So what is the topic that we're discussing, or what is doing the action? The book. So the book is going to be the subject, and so gustar has to become gusta. Now students are often tempted to say me gusto, which is incorrect for reasons that I will explain in just a few seconds. But literally what you're saying when you say me gusta el libro is the book is pleasing to me. Now, if you translated gustar as to like, then it's more difficult to manipulate this sentence or to formulate it. The book, like to me, that's not very clear to an English speaker. So, for that reason, it's very helpful to translate this verb as to be pleasing, or at least to have that sort of translation in your mind as you're working with sentences with gustar. Now, I mentioned that you don't want to say me gusto. Me gusta el libro. First of all, it's not grammatically correct. The book is the third person singular, and gusto is the first person singular. And in Spanish, the subject has to match the verb in number and gender. I'm sorry, in number and in person. And here we don't have that match, so this doesn't work. If you say me gusto, you can say me gusto and it's grammatically correct. But probably you don't want to go around saying me gusto. What does me gusto mean? Well, if we do the translation and work backwards, I am pleasing. We know it's I because of the O. I am pleasing to me. I am pleasing to myself. So that makes sense. I am pleasing to myself. But more than likely, it's not something you are going to go around saying, and it doesn't make sense at all when you have something over here like el libro. Now, Spanish has a pretty flexible word order. And so we can say, me gusta el libro, and we can also say, el libro me gusta. But if we say it like this, we're putting emphasis on the book. So this is not a very common construction. So if someone asks you, is the book or the TV show pleasing to you? They're not sure, and you say, the book is pleasing to me, and they're like, did you say the TV show? And you say, no, it's the book. The book is what's pleasing to me. That's what this means. There's emphasis on the word book. The book is pleasing to me. So this is not something that you would commonly say, but notice how it's a little bit more difficult to work this in English because of the word order. Now we're saying the book is pleasing to me. So here we have 1, 2, 3. Here we have 3, 1, 2. So it's a little bit more challenging, but this is grammatically correct. Now, let's say you want to say, the book is pleasing to us. How would you change this to say, the book is pleasing to us? Well, what you can do is you can simply change your pronoun because the book is still what is pleasing, right? So here's your subject. This is el libro gusta, and then we have to change this to nos. The book is pleasing to us. Now, there are other verbs that function like gustar. Some examples are fascinar, to fascinate, encantar, this might translate to something as like very directly as to enchant, but more commonly we translate it as to love. But you might think of it as to enchant if you're a beginning student. Interesar, to interest. Molestar, to bother. Aburrir, to bore, etc. There are many verbs that function like gustar. So you have to know when you learn these verbs, you have to learn that that very, very often, with the exception of maybe aburrir, these are going to require the indirect object pronoun, and they're going to have a structure like this. So we can change this around. What if we wanted to say, the book is boring to us? We said aburrir is to bore. Aburrir is to bore. So the book is boring to us. Then we simply conjugate aburrir appropriately. It's not aburrimos, but aburre. If you said aburrimos, it would mean we are boring to ourselves, and then this part wouldn't make sense. The book is boring to us. Let's say you wanted to say, the book is fascinating to her. We need fascinar. The book is fascinating. Fascina. And then here we have le. Le fascina el libro. The book is fascinating to her. And le is ambiguous, right? Because le can refer to or for him, to or for her, or to or for usted. So if we want to be a little more specific here, we would write a ella. Not just ella, but a ella. To her. Then this becomes a little redundant. The book is fascinating to her, to her. That's just the way it is. It's just it becomes redundant. We can remove this part, but we can't remove the le. The le is obligatory. We can't say a ella fascina. It doesn't work. We always have to have the pronoun. Always. Okay? And let's try a different one. Let's try you, the informal you. You are, let's see, the books. Well, actually, let's do houses. The houses are interesting to you. The houses are interesting to you. So you probably know las casas, houses, houses, and then we're going to work backwards. Houses are fascinating to you, so we're going to have 3 pieces here. Houses are fascinating, or I think we said interesting. Houses are interesting to you. So how do we conjugate interesar? Well, casas is your subject, but casas this time it's a plural word. Earlier we saw singular words, so this is plural. So here we have to have interesan. The houses are interesting. This agrees with this. Plural, plural. Now we just need to put to you, and our object pronoun is te. The houses are interesting to you, or the houses interest you. Now it's a little challenging to say this just spontaneously when you're first learning, but the more you hear it and the more you work with it, the more natural this becomes. So it will become like second nature if you just keep working at it. But if you're just starting out, what you might do is just remember that it's helpful to work backwards. If you work backwards and use the same English structure, you'll pretty much get it right. Houses are interesting to you, and make sure these agree. And then if you want to be more specific or you want to be emphatic, you can put a little redundant redundancy to specify who it is, whom is being interested, or who is doing the liking, or who is receiving the action of the verb. Houses are interesting to you. A ti te interesan las casas. This would be emphatic. You like houses. So otherwise you can just leave it like this. Now notice we've had examples of just the third person singular, like interesa. And we've had an example of the third person plural, interesan, and other verbs. These are basically the only forms that you're really going to use. You're going to use the most. These are really the only forms that you will really be using, right? Because anything else sounds a little funny, and you probably wouldn't really go around saying it. Like, nos gustamos. We like ourselves. Nos fascinamos. We fascinate ourselves. So probably wouldn't say that. So the Almost and other variants on that is probably not something that you'll be using very much. So if you remember third person singular and third person plural, you should do very well with these verbs that function like gustar.